Well, welcome and good evening, everyone. We are so glad you guys could join us for a very special and a bit more unique Talk It Over this week. We are actually doing it as our life group. So this is our life group here. We have a new guy with us here, John. Welcome.
Hey. Thank you.
So yeah, we thought it'd be kind of fun to do something a little different, to give you guys an idea and show you what this looks like as a life group and what it can look like online, especially if you are in different areas, giving you that opportunity to be a part of a life group online, what that looks like. So this should be a lot of fun. It should be good for the questions, and we'll kind of see where we get going. But before that, we'll just check in with everybody. How has everybody's week's been going this past week?
Yeah, it was good. It was a good weekend. We got a little bit of rain, but it was nice. We're sliding into that cooler weather.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of shifting into kind of the fall mode. I'm trying to coordinate getting together with my family for Thanksgiving and actually Christmas. I've got one member of our extended family who's like, Christmas, it's time for Christmas. Let's figure out Christmas.
Yeah.
So doing some of that too, which is nice. It's nice to plan to get together with family and hang out. And if we don't plan it, it just doesn't happen. So it was good.
Yeah. Yeah, I was sick, unfortunately, for a few days, and then sniffles and just, you feel gross. So came out of that and then got to try and catch up on work. So that's always fun. So it's just been kind of the repercussions of that for the past, few days. Finally getting caught up. So that's been nice. Getting back in the groove of things. How about your week?
Right on. Oh, yeah. Weekend was good, cool, rainy. Did a little bit of camping with my parents, which was fun. So enjoyed that. Emmett had a blast. He was actually sad to leave. He wanted to stay longer. So that was good because we like to see that from him, that he wants to be engaged with his grandparents. So that was really good. And it was funny you mentioned Christmas, because we were talking about that again on the weekend, figuring out what Christmas looks like this year for us, and kind of who's where and when for what days, and kind of starting to get that organized. It's I guess it's creeping up. It doesn't feel like it, but I think when that cool air and weather changes over, I think we all get into that idea that, Christmas is coming. So we have to shift into that mode, right?
As soon as October hits, that's cold weather time, right? We get snow sometimes by the end of October.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yes. I'm not looking forward to that. I guess we have to get the snowblower out and make sure it runs before it gets too cold. And got to get the Christmas lights up again, because got to do that before it gets too cold to do that.
So or if you left them up all year, you just get to feel okay with it.
Just have to plug them in and away you go.
Yeah.
Away you go. Yeah.
Right on. Well, I don't know what that looks like for you guys here on YouTube or on podcast, but please leave a comment. Let us know how that week's been going for you guys. Maybe you're excited as it's shifting into fall. Maybe you love that fall. I guess for me, the big part of fall that I do like is pumpkin spice lattes. That's a big one for me. Maybe you're like that. Maybe that's what you look forward to in the fall. It's something like that. A nice little treat as it gets cool. But let us know. So we are kind of wrapping up this final message in our series, Peace of Mind. Been a great series so far. Certainly got a lot out of it. And if you haven't had a chance, you guys, of course, can go check out our YouTube channel at LifeNorth.Church. It's all posted there. You can catch up right from the beginning of the series all the way to this current one, and really just get a lot out of those messages. So this week, Craig was talking about burnout and beating burnout and what that looks like. And I thought it was very interesting that, beating burnout, that more than half of workers feel burned out as a result of their jobs. I thought that was actually quite interesting, because it seems really high to me that there'd be, half of the workforce is feeling that way. But it's one of those things I don't think we talk about very frequently about. I'm feeling burned out. I don't think we really discuss that. And really kind of dive into what that looks like.
Well,
now
it's maybe we don't even know if you're burned out. Like you wouldn't know to use that word.
Yeah. Maybe
So
you're
that's
just
probably
always
part of the
working.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Maybe we just don't realize that we are burning out, and just don't realize it. That's actually that actually might be it.
There's symptoms, but you don't have the diagnosis.
Exactly.
That's right. That's what we're here for. We're here to help diagnose. Let's
Welcome to
diagnose.
Therapy Session 101.
I like how Craig put the differences between stress and burnout because they are very close, but just slightly different. So stress is generally short-lived and related to a temporary project or event. So, for John, that might have been this week. Work's piled up. That's a bit stressful trying to, get everything caught back up. And how am I going to get it all caught up? Certainly that can be a stressing a moment for sure. Or it's something you guys, some event happened, something, distracting happened. And all of a sudden you're focused on that. And that becomes something that's stressful for you.
Yep.
Burnout is a chronic stress that feels never ending, which sometimes we can get in that cycle of this is never going to stop.
It'd be hard to know when it switches. Like if it's been going on for like a month or 6 weeks, like, is that still stress? Have we switched into chronic now? You know what I mean? Like when does it cross over from one to the other? Because it can go on so long that you don't even realize it anymore because you're just so used to it, right? You feel, overwhelmed, or you feel like you got no energy or whatever it is. It's just been like normal for months. Yep. And that would be chronic, but I wonder when it switches over, when it kind of makes that turn.
Well, I wonder if people just think they're constantly stressed when really it's actually burnout. And they just keep saying, oh, I'm just stressed. Things are stressful, but it's really, it's the burnout, not the stress.
Yeah. I think the biggest word is busy. Busy just comes up. Oh, I'm just busy. That's why I'm stressed, right?
Yeah.
And then, oh, well, if you're always busy or you always think you're busy and you always or think that's the reason, then it might be something else that's causing your stress.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard because then you have to figure out why you're so busy, and then you have to prioritize your life, and you might have to make some changes. And sometimes it's easier just to stay and keep spinning that hamster wheel, right?
Yeah.
So burnout, it can, manifest in a few different ways, as well as stress. They can manifest in different ways. We have a physical, mental, and emotional. They can all come out in very different ways. And sometimes, again, we may not realize that those are actually coming out in those situations. And then Craig kind of touched on some common mistakes. We tend to run ourselves in the ground, as you were saying, John. We're always busy. We're always going. We're always doing, right? And we find ourselves really just diving into stuff and not really taking that time or that break that we might need. We try to do it all on our own. So we're not asking, people for help in projects, situations, things that we, really could use a hand doing. We tend to just want to do it ourselves. We got this. It's fine. I can manage. No problem. And then we can also then dwell on the negative. So really things are just, bad. Everything's just against me. Everything's just, and you sit in this mindset of negativity. And that can really be difficult and certainly hard. And I like how Craig kind of finished the message with his main point here. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is rest. And I thought that was quite interesting, that sometimes we just need to take a break. And Craig touched on this in his personal life. So again, watch that message. He breaks that down really good. And it really kind of brings it out as things that he was struggling with and what he needed to do to get that rest. Now, that rest can be many different things. It doesn't mean you have to just go have a nap. It's sometimes just shifting your mind and thinking of something completely different than what you do day to day can be that rest for you. So we're going to jump into our questions here. But before, we're going to read our scripture. So, John, if you could read our scripture for us, that'd be great.
Sure. So I'm going to read 1 Kings 19, 3-6. It's the NIV. Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. Oh dear. I have had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was some baked bread over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay down again. I love that verse. I love that.
It's a good verse.
Get up and eat.
Get up and eat.
What are you doing?
I think he might have been expecting that angel to just
Kill him.
finish him off there, and he can just go to heaven and that's it, right? But no,
baked you some fresh bread. Here you go.
Here you
over
go.
hot coals. It's like, okay, I don't want to die anymore. That smells pretty good.
See, I understand that fresh bread. That would bring me back to life.
Life
I was gonna say that could make you jump right up and be ready to go again.
That's right.
Yeah,
I'm good.
sorry about that. I love that.
All right, thanks, John. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So we're gonna jump into a little bit of an icebreaker here. It's kind of a fun one. So how do you guys respond to fight or flight situations? What does that look like for you guys?
Interesting.
Sometimes it's fight, and it could be an argument. It could be when I was younger, you get that phase where people scare you, like jump out at you and you instinctively lash out. And so I hit a few people in my fight or flight situation, and sometimes just run away. Like, I don't want to have to deal with this. And so I'm out of here. And as a guy, this could be stereotyping, but as a guy, typically it's the heavily emotional situations where those come up and it's fight or flight. And those are the ones where I would flee probably more than fight when it comes to
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I can attest to that for myself. Yeah, I'd say like as soon as things get like if it starts to feel like, wow, this is like maybe too a little emotionally charged for me, it's like I'm just gonna slowly phase out here, hop onto my iPad and play some like Fruit Ninja or something, I'm just trying to disconnect. Or if fight probably kicks in most of all during the arguments, it turns into like I get really defensive. So and it's like this is like me defending myself or my argument, or instead of it just being like a rational reasoning thing. So that's something I've been learning to do more of, is less fighting in those situations, because it doesn't usually help. So yeah.
Oh, yeah. For me, I am on the fight side for sure, more than anything. I don't want to, I guess, quit, give up. It just doesn't, I don't know, it's not part of, I guess, me or my personality. So for me, it's like, let's battle. I just want to battle. That's just something that's always been there. So yeah, I find myself, even when it gets to the emotional stuff, I dive into the battle. It's sometimes you got to dig in and battle through that emotional stuff, even if it's hard. I know for me, when I was younger, it turned into very aggressive arguments when it got very emotional. And so worked on that, so I don't quite get so worked up, but definitely want to stay in it and work it through and see it to the finish, I guess. So yeah, definitely on the more fighting side, but
the beard is channeling some inner Viking or something.
Something like that. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but
it's some Taekwondo coming out right there.
Yeah, Evan wants to see my beard braided kind of all Viking. I don't know. I might have to try that sometime and see, but could be fun.
Leanne would be wanting to help with that, so
put some beads in there and
put a couple beads and it could be a lot of
Star
fun.
Wars almost.
Yeah, it could be a lot of fun.
I could see it.
So let us know, guys. What's that look like for you? Are you a fight or flight? Let us know in the comments what that might be. I'm curious to see what everybody else is feeling. If they're more on what side they're on. It's one of those questions that interests me in kind of who you are, what you like to do. I quite enjoy that. So our next one here. So when you are stressed or close to burnout, are you most likely to run yourself into the ground, try to do it all on your own, or dwell on the negative? How could you change the way you respond to stress? That is a very big question. Lots to think
It
about
is.
Yeah.
It's a good question. It changes, right? It changes over time and with different situations.
Yeah.
I know when I was younger, when I was really stressed or close to burnout, it just meant I would take on more of it myself because my trust level would go down and I need just to control this more. And so I'll just do more of the work myself. That's kind of where I would go. And that's changed over the years, hopefully. So I don't do as much of that. The one I've been working on recently has been more, don't go to the negative. Don't dwell on the negative when it's stressful or when we get burned out, feel like I'm burned out. So that's the one I've been more aware of, I think, recently is dwelling on the negative.
Yeah.
For myself.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure I've experienced all of them, to be honest.
Yep.
The one that stands out is definitely the negativity, dwelling on that. It's very tempting for me to just dwell on that. I can relate with Elijah. Just praying, God, I've had enough, take me. And that's just everything just feels like it's crashing down. You get overwhelmed. And I find it can also cause the other symptoms to bleed in with like taking it all on your own. Like you were saying, Dad, if you get super negative, then it can also mean like, you know what, I just don't want anyone to be around me, stay away from me, I'm just going to do it myself sort of attitude, right? So definitely a lot of that too. But yeah, the negativity is like the biggest battle for sure.
I think that's pretty common. I think that whole it's negative, so I'm going to withdraw from people. Yeah, that's pretty common.
Which is counterintuitive because like a lot of people have perspectives that you need during those moments. So perspective is honestly what you need. Like with this angel showing up, right? For Elijah, and he's like, hey, eat. Sometimes you need a friend to come along and, smack you in the head and be like, eat. And then you eat and you're like, oh, maybe it's not that bad, and helps a lot.
Take a nap. Just lay down for a few minutes. You'll be fine.
That too. He was napping.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes that's all you need. So, or just somebody that could support you. Like for me, that time when I would take it all on myself, it would make it worse. When actually what I needed to do was be able to trust people and get some help to deal with. And I would actually make it worse, right? We talk about getting in that negative spiral. I would actually make it worse by withdrawing from people, taking more of it on myself, and actually make the pile of stress higher, which would push me down even more and become really negative. So learning not to do that, to kind of like, no, I'm going to include other people in, that was big.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling negative about it, is it just because you're negative, you don't want to be around people? Is that what you're thinking, John?
I'm sure there's other things. I think the negativity makes it certainly worse because you just then start to like get annoyed with people, short fuse. So then obviously people either don't want to be around you or like you're pushing people away, almost lashing out literally because you're negative. Can be bad. And then ironically, you also then just run yourself into the ground, which is like the first thing, right? So like all of that, you're just doing all of them. I find they all work together, honestly. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, for me, it's definitely the negativity. That's a big one, and I saw that most just through Emmett's stuff. That was a big one, and that negativity really, really weighs on you. And just trying to figure out how to do everything, be a part of everything, get to all the appointments, get to see them, get to see my wife, keep all the bills paid, keep the house moving, keep everything, just seemed to pile up. And it was like, something would go good, and then we get two more bad things happen, and then it kept just pushing and pushing. And that negative, man, it got to the point where it was coming out in me in a physical sense. Like I was physically just in pain, and my body was trying to tell me like you need to stop this. This is getting too much. And it got to the point that my back locked out. I've had chronic back pain, hips. Like it was crazy how it all had come out in that as the stress of the moment. And it almost turned to that burnout as kind of we talked about shifting, because at points it was like, this is never going to end. We're never going to get out of this cycle. And it just started becoming very, very prominent that I just can't go anymore. Physically, mentally, emotionally, felt like I just couldn't go on. And it was at that point, John, it's like, please just make it all stop. It's like, it just got to stop. I just can't, I can't do it anymore.
Yep.
So that's where that kind of really pushed out. And then changing the way I respond to the stress. And again, it's lashing out, withdrawing. That was kind of the pullback. So it's finding that balance. And for me, it was finding a different focus, something that that's opposite to anything that's going on. And that was martial arts for me. That was the shift. That was the outlet where I could focus very intently on one thing and could forget about everything else for 45 minutes to an hour. And I could just do that. And for me, that's been very helpful in removing the stresses that do pop up, because then I can just kind of get out of that space for a while and refocus on something very completely different. To the medical stuff is very different. So for me, that was one way to kind of just recharge and remove some of that stress and be able just to keep moving forward.
Yeah. Well, and it's something that your body and brain, you can feel like this is something that I'm like achieving and improving in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sharpening my skills. I can see improvements. Like I can see the progression. Yep. That helps, I think, to be able to have those milestones in your head instead of just like, with your situation with like, a medically complex child, that sounds like the perfect situation for burnout, right? Like, when is it going to end, right?
Yeah.
So to have like little things in there, like Taekwondo, and you just like, this is something I can see improvements in, and you can focus on that for, that lesson. I could see that, helping a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great way for me, not for everybody, but for me, it's a great way to find that burnout. Sometimes it's going for a run and just putting on a podcast or something and just go for that run and just get away from everything and everybody for the half hour, and just let your body just kind of reset a little bit.
But I think you're making a good point that it's not always clear your schedule.
No.
And sometimes we default to that, right? Like, well, I just need to clear my schedule. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I need to remove the stressful things from my life. If they were gone, then it'd be fine. And so I got to get rid of stuff. When actually, and that's what Craig said too, right? I need to find different kinds of things to be involved in, to think about it, to, get my mind on something different. He needed some adventure in his life. You're talking about go for a run, like get your body moving, get some adrenaline pumping. So the stress and negativity, or the stress and the burnout, may not be because you're doing too much. It may be the kinds of things that we're doing. And so we actually need to shift and have something else in there.
Yeah. You need a better balance.
Exactly. It's balancing the schedule, not clearing the schedule, adjusting what's in that schedule and where it fits in to find that time.
I don't know if it is balancing. I was challenged about that when I was listening to a guy did a podcast where he talked about like sometimes life is just like that roller coaster. Like with you guys, with Emmett, you can't balance that. You're in the hospital constantly. You're driving back and forth. You're trying to do dialysis when he's at home. Like, how do you balance? You can't balance that.
Yeah.
It's finding other things to kind of relieve that and shift your mind and rejuvenate and refresh you, even in the middle of a busy season.
Mm-hmm.
So, because the truth is, it doesn't go on forever. It's going to come to an end eventually. So then how do I choose healthy, which may not be balanced in the middle of that? So this may be a season where, we're getting ready for a transplant like you guys did for Emmett. And like, life is crazy and you've got all kinds of stuff on your plate. But now you're in a season where it's not as much like that, right? It's much quieter.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's just what life throws at you, and you can't clear stuff out of the way to balance it. You just got to kind of find some healthy things to rejuvenate you. And that's what Craig talked about. Like for him, it was flying on airplanes solo. And what was the other thing? Jiu-jitsu, getting into some hand-to-hand.
Yeah.
Different for different people.
Yeah.
So for you, it's Taekwondo that kind of rejuvenates you. Do you find that kind of refreshes you? And
Yep. Helps me to just refocus. Allows me to just get away from any of the stresses that day-to-day things that I can just not have to think about for a while. And again, as John was saying, that accomplishment of working towards something or learning something new or trying to relearn something that I've forgotten over the years. Being able to redo that is certainly feels really good. And knowing that you're accomplishing something and you're working towards something, it makes a big difference on the focus for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. We got a little bit more time here. We can see if we can get another one in here. Is there currently an area in your life where you're feeling close to burnout? And how are you processing it? And what changes could you make to rest this week?
I like that. I don't feel like I'm close to burnout in any area, but I can feel where the stress is kind of rising in some areas and kind of headed in that direction.
Yep.
The stress that doesn't stop becomes burnout, lead you to burnout.
Yep.
And the changes, I think, is something you mentioned, Ian, that sometimes there's good things we know are actually helpful for us and rejuvenate us, and we forget. And we stop doing them, or we set them aside, or I was too busy, so I don't do it anymore, even though it's really important. Yep. And so, for Craig, he could say, I don't have time to go learn how to fly a plane. I can't do that. Or you could say, I don't have time to go back to Taekwondo. Yep. For me, it's working out and training. If I don't do that, then stuff starts to weigh on me more. But it's so easy to push it aside and say, I'm not going to do that right now. So it's rediscovering and redoing some of those things that are really important for me to kind of renew me, refresh me.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's actually pretty similar to me. Thankfully, the place or the company I work for, they take it very seriously. Like when employees take vacation, you have time off, take it. This is what it's for. There's no real guilt wrapped around, oh no, you're going on vacation, we can't really afford to lose you right now, sort of thing. It's take your vacation. We want you to be refreshed. This is really beneficial to the company, not only to you, right? To come back and you're not burned out. But I can see where I'm probably going to enter into a season where I'm going to be taking on more stuff. So that could turn into, if you're not careful, right? You leave out those little things that you didn't think were a huge deal that turn out to be critical. For me, working out is a big one. Working out is a really big one. That I definitely neglect because it's I don't really feel like working out. Maybe I'll just take a break, and somehow that's gonna rejuvenate me more than it would have to work out. Is kind of the little trick that you kind of play on yourself. Meanwhile, as soon as I enter the gym, I almost instantly feel in my head this is why I keep doing it. Right? You get in there and you're right, I have all this, my plan. I recognize equipment. I recognize I worked really hard there and I get to try and do that again, sort of thing. It all comes back to you pretty quickly and you just get into a zone, which is quite helpful, actually, to work towards that. When you first start working out, it probably doesn't feel like that. You have to get to a point. It's easy to take that for granted.
When you just start back up again, it's just painful.
It's just painful, and you just have to get over that. Usually, once you start going, I think, after it's been painful, you finally enter the gym and you start the workouts, then you're kind of, I think it starts, you're okay, this is not as bad as I was making it out to be. But, yeah.
Well, and I like that because you're talking about doing something physical because your job is mostly thinking, right?
Yeah.
And
It's all
I think Craig talked
working
about that in the message, right? If you're a thinker most of the time, you need something physical. And if you're doing physical, you probably need some thinking time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've done labor jobs, and I can say, like, I've definitely not been, like, working out is not quite the same when you're sore from just a day of work, right?
Yeah.
So, and so if you're out, like, carrying heavy stuff and working in the sun, and it's a workout's maybe not going to be a thing that you're looking forward to. So it could just be relaxing. I don't know, putting on like a movie, reading a book. A movie probably won't help you much intellectually, but a book or podcast or something, a walk, relaxing. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't say I'm close to burnout. I don't feel the stress levels high, but I may have like a high stress level, I guess. And maybe it seems things don't seem stressful to me, but they actually are stressful. So I'm not sure exactly how close I am to those. But I think it's kind of what you're saying is like I kind of forget to put those things in there.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something this week I need to work on is I need to add some of those things that help me to refresh, help me to remove some of those stresses. Because certainly it's easy to get caught up again with little kids. It's easy to get caught up and you push that aside because, they want to do stuff. They're and you kind of push all your own stuff aside to refresh, to again, continue to be involved with them and then forget to have that built into your schedule. And so for me, I think that's where I kind of have to work on what does that look like? Putting that in the schedule and having it very set for me. And that I have to very much stick to it. Otherwise, if I don't, it's that time easily gets eaten up by everything else that goes on for sure in the evenings. So
just disappears.
It does. It just disappears. And I don't know where it all goes, but it all disappears and time rolls around. And next thing you know, I'm like, man, I got to go to bed. I'm just tired.
Well, and it comes back to a lot, the power of intentionality. Yep. We just have to be intentional to make these things happen. And we were talking at the beginning about, Thanksgiving and Christmas and getting it in the schedule. The truth is, if we're not intentional, like this is a priority, I'm going to put it in my schedule. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen by accident. Yep. So that's true for all this stuff.
It is. It certainly is. So yeah. Again, excellent message we've had this past week. Excellent. Certainly more to unpack. But the best way to do that is, of course, just like what we're doing here tonight. Have a life group, be in a life group, start a life group, whatever that might be. As you can see, you two friends, you don't have to live in the same area. You don't have to be in the same country. You guys can be in all over the places and still, again, be able to connect and dive into this stuff certainly more deeply. Again, with different perspectives that certainly make for excellent conversation and maybe even help you realize maybe there's areas or things that you need to look at or work on and just kind of help you work through that. So, of course, we want to thank the tech guys, which is kind of us here. So thank you guys for getting this all put together for us this week. It's been a lot of fun. I've quite enjoyed this. I hope you guys out there have too. Please let us know what you thought of this. Was this something you guys liked? And if so, leave a comment, give us a like, whatever that might be. I guess we'll wrap it up there. So we want to remember, guys, whoever finds God finds life.